Welcome back. I'm Donald Cleveland. I'm the author of Revitalizing America, a declaration against our government. And if you're interested in buying the book, be sure that you buy the new second edition. It has many updates in it. It was published a couple of months ago, and I think you'll find it very interesting. Now, before I continue on with the discussion of the Constitution, especially Article 1, which deals with the Congress of the United States and its powers and its organization, I thought it would be interesting to tell you another story about my lobbying experience. And that basically comes down to the fact that when you lobby, you have to talk to legislators to get things done. You have to tell them what's an advantage and what's a disadvantage. But there's sort of a rule that's written that every superior legislative body likes to tell inferior legislative bodies what to do. And I happen to represent county governments. And for several years, the state legislature had passed a law in the state that I was working that said that the school boards, the county boards, and the city officials could not meet in secret. They had to meet in open, public places to discuss business. And they couldn't meet over the lunch counter to talk to each other about business. Now, if they did talk about business, city business, county business, school board business, when they were at a lunch counter or having a lunch meeting together with just a couple of their friends, that was forbidden. And they could be removed from office for having such a meeting because it was a violation of the sunshine laws or the open meeting laws. But you know what? When the legislature passed that type of a law, they didn't include themselves in it. Oh no, this is sort of like the Supreme Court nowadays, where they tell all the inferior courts under them, and the inferior courts have rules of ethics and guidelines, but the Supreme Court does not. Well, in this case, the states adopted those laws requiring the open meeting of all the cities and the counties and the school boards. And so we got sick and tired of it. So the school boards, the county governments, and the city governments got together. And we went to the legislature and we said, now, what's fair for the goose is fair for the gander. So we forced them into adopting a series of rules which compelled them to stop having secret committee meetings, secret subcommittee meetings, and also required them to publish a list a day in advance of what bills they were going to take up on the floor of the House and the Senate the next day. Well, as you get toward the end of a legislative session, things go on and on and on into the wee hours of the morning. And my president of the association that I represented and I had been working throughout the session on a major court reform law. And several things that we wanted to have in that law were things that would cause ease of administration, allow more public access to the records of the court, also create a small claims court so that people could go take their claim to the court themselves without not having to have an attorney, and also getting rid of the old justice of the peace system where someone could be a judge in a small town, be elected, even though they had no legal or judicial experience. So we had worked with that law throughout the course of the legislative session. It was a week until the end of the session. The legislature was meeting until midnight. My president and I decided that we weren't going to leave. We were going to stay there as long as the legislature was in session. So we were in the rotunda of the Capitol building at 2 in the morning. He was asleep on a bench, and I was standing next to the rotunda looking down into the basement of the Capitol building. All of a sudden, a sergeant at arms walked by. He was a friend of ours. And without looking in our direction, he said, "I want you to know that they're having a secret meeting on your bill in room 26, and they're going to take parts of the bill out that you want." Didn't look at us, just kept walking right along as if he had never seen us. I shook my president's shoulder, woke him up, told him what was happening. He got up and he said, "Let's go." So we ran through the chamber of the legislature, back to the committee room. When we reached the door, the president of my association, who was all of 5'5" tall and weighed 130 pounds, took a run and dove like a rocket onto the table of the committee room, slid the entire length of the table about 10 feet, grabbed the chairman by the neck, by the collars of his coat, and shook him. He called him every name in the book. And he says, "Why are you holding a secret meeting? Why are you taking things out of the bill that you promised us you wouldn't take out?" At that time, other sergeants at arms came and tried to pull my president off from the committee chairman. The subcommittee chair stood up and said, "The meeting is now adjourned." And after a few minutes, we were escorted out of the room by the sergeants at arms. And at 5 o'clock in the morning, our bill came to the floor of the legislature unamended. And it passed, unamended. So we got the things that we were working for. But is there a lesson here? Yes, there is a lesson. Again, like I said, what's fair for the goose is fair for the gander. In the laws that the legislature had passed to require that cities, counties, and school districts have open meetings and have no secret meetings, the penalty was they could be removed from office. When the legislature adopted rules prohibiting secret meetings, subcommittee meetings, and committee meetings, there was no penalty. In other words, they could do anything they wanted to violate it, as they were trying to do when we broke in. And had we not been there, and had my president not grabbed the chairman of the committee by the collar and shook him, there is no other penalty. So, the dual standard in law. Those in power, many times, get away with things. Those who don't have the power or are in inferior positions get penalized more than they should. Okay, now we're going to continue on with a discussion of Article 1 of the Constitution, the Congress. But during the last episode, you learned that providing prostitutes, bribing, contributing to campaigns, wining and dining legislators is part of a standard procedure for some lobbyists. Country club memberships and convoluted wholesale schemes to get high-value gifts into corrupt legislators and government executives and judges' hands is also on the list. While keeping that in mind, I need to ask the question if you want to do something about it. Do you want to stop it? If you really want to do something about it, go to our website, revitalizeamericanow.org, and contribute to our campaign to revitalize America. We're going to go into a continuation of the discussion on Article 1 of the Constitution. During the prior episode, we talked about the first part of Article 1. And the first part of Article 1 basically dealt with the organization of Congress. It talked about the fact that there are two houses in Congress, and that one of them is the House of Representatives, where people are elected for 2-year terms, and the other is the Senate of the United States, where people are elected for 6-year terms. It dealt with basically their qualifications to be members of Congress. It also dealt with the establishment of a census, and the census would be used for two purposes, basically for levying taxes, but also for the purpose of determining how many members there would be to the House of Representatives in particular states. And now we'll continue on with a discussion of the real guts of Article 1, and that is, what are the duties of Congress? And I say duties because people have to remember that the Constitution was developed after we had won a hard-fought war to separate ourselves from the King of England and the royalty dictating what we could do in the United States. So when the Constitution was developed, you have to think of it from the point of view, it was developed so that we knew what our duties would be in this new country. And we gave these duties to Congress to perform them, not as a frivolity, not as an option, but as a duty. So on with the duties of Congress. Section 7. All bills for raising revenue shall originate in the House of Representatives, but the Senate may propose or concur with the amendments as on other bills. So the House has to originate every appropriation. Every bill which shall have passed the House of Representatives and the Senate shall, before it becomes law, be presented to the President of the United States. If he approve, he shall sign it. But if he shall not approve, he shall return it with his objections to the House in which it shall have originated, who shall enter the objections at large on their journal or the congressional record, and proceed to reconsider it. If after such reconsideration 2/3 of that House shall agree to pass the bill, it shall be sent, together with the objections, to the other House, by which it shall likewise be reconsidered, and if approved by 2/3 of that House, it shall become a law. So they overrode the veto of the President. But in all such cases, the votes of both houses shall be determined by yeas and nays, and the names of the persons voting for and against the bill shall be entered into the journal of each House respectively. We want to know who voted to override the veto of the President. If any bill shall not be returned by the President within 10 days, Sundays excepted, after it shall have been presented to him, the same shall be law, in like manner as if he had signed it, unless Congress, by their adjournment, prevent its return, in which case it shall not be law. So he has 10 days to sign it, excluding Sundays. If he doesn't sign it, it becomes law if Congress stays in session. Every order, resolution, or vote to which the concurrence of the Senate and the House of Representatives may be necessary, except in the question of adjournment, shall be presented to the President of the United States, and before the same shall take effect, shall be approved by him, or being disapproved by him, shall be repassed by 2/3 of the Senate and the House of Representatives, according to the rules and limitations prescribed in the case of a bill. So, a joint resolution declaring a holiday would go through the same process as a bill. Section 8, the Congress shall have the power to lay and collect taxes, duties, imposts, and excises, to pay the debts and provide for the common defense and general welfare of the United States. But all duties, imposts, and excises shall be uniform throughout the United States. Congress will have the power to borrow money on the credit of the United States. It will have the power to regulate commerce with foreign nations and among the several states and within Indian tribes. Congress has the power to establish a uniform rule of naturalization and uniform laws on the subject of bankruptcies throughout the United States. Congress will have the power to coin money, to regulate the value thereof and of foreign coin, and fix the standard of weights and measures. Congress has the power to provide for the punishment of counterfeiting the securities and current coin of the United States. To establish post offices and post roads. To promote the progress of science and the useful arts by securing for limited times to authors and inventors the inclusive right to their respective writings and discoveries, copyright and patent right. To constitute tribunals inferior to the Supreme Court, so the Congress can create any number of courts by any name all throughout the United States. It's within their power to do it. To define and punish piracies and felonies committed on the high seas and offenses against the laws of nations. To declare war, grant letters of marque and reprisal, and to make rules concerning captures on land and water. To raise and support armies, but no appropriation of money to that use shall be for a longer term than 2 years. In other words, you can't give more appropriations to the Army than would last 2 years at a time. To provide and maintain a Navy. To make rules for the government and regulation of the land and naval forces. Now, for those of you who think about the Second Amendment, listen to this. To provide for calling forth the militia to execute the laws of the Union, suppress insurrections, and repel invasions. Now, the next one is equally important. To provide for organizing, arming, and disciplining the militia and the governing of such part of them as may be employed in the service of the United States, reserving to the states, respectively, the appointment of the officers and the authority of training the militia according to the discipline prescribed by Congress. To exercise exclusive legislation in all cases whatsoever over such district, not exceeding 10 square miles, this is the District of Columbia, as may, by cession of particular states and the acceptance of Congress, become the seat of government of the United States, and to exercise like authority over all places purchased by the consent of the legislature of the state in which the same shall be, for the erection of forts, magazines, arsenals, dockyards, and other needful buildings. To make laws which shall be necessary and proper for carrying into execution the foregoing powers and all other powers vested by this Constitution in the government of the United States or in any department officer thereof. Massive power is vested in Congress. Section 9. The migration or importation of such persons as may be in any of the states now in existence shall think proper to admit shall not be prohibited by Congress prior to the year 1808, but a tax or a duty may be imposed on such importation not exceeding $10 per person. So they wanted the states to bring in as many people as possible, immigrants as possible, for a period until 1808, and then after that Congress would control it. The privilege of the writ of habeas corpus shall not be suspended unless when and in case of a rebellion or an invasion, the public safety may require it. No bill of attainder or ex post facto law shall be passed. No capitation or other direct tax shall be laid unless in proportion to the census or the enumeration herein before directed to be taken. No tax or duty shall be laid on articles exported from any state. There's a problem with the Articles of Confederation, right? No preference shall be given by any regulation of commerce or revenue to the ports of one state over those of another, nor shall vessels bound to or from one state be obligated to enter, clear, or pay duties in another. No money shall be drawn from the Treasury, but in consequence of appropriations made by law, and a regular statement and account of receipts and expenditures of all public money shall be published from time to time. Get this, we've had it up to here with kings and queens, right? No title of nobility shall be granted by the United States, and no person holding any office of profit or trust under them shall, without the consent of Congress, accept of any present, emolument, office, or title of any kind whatever from any king, prince, or foreign state. Section 10. No state shall enter into any treaty, alliance, or confederation, grant letters of marque and reprisal, coin any money, emit bills of credit, make anything but gold and silver coin a tender in payment of debts, pass any bill of attainder, ex post facto law, or law impairing the obligation of contracts, or grant any title of nobility. No state, without the consent of Congress, should lay any imposts or duties on imports or exports except what may be absolutely necessary for executing its inspection laws, and the net produce of all duties and imposts laid by any state on imports or exports shall be for the use of the Treasury of the United States, and all such laws shall be subject to the revision and control of Congress. No state, without the consent of Congress, should lay any duty of tonnage, keep troops or ships of war in time of peace, enter into any agreement or compact with another state, or with a foreign power, or engage in war, unless actually invaded or in such imminent danger as will not admit delay. So that's the framework of how things should work and how the founders wrote it. Just remember, Article 1, Congress, was the first clause behind the preamble to the Constitution, which stated the purpose of this grand contract with us, the people of the United States. Remember, the purpose of this contract with us is stated as to form a more perfect union, to establish justice, to ensure domestic tranquility, to provide for the common defense, promote the general welfare, and secure the blessings of liberty to ourselves and our posterity. So what do we have? What do we have instead? We have a bickering within the political parties which paralyzes legislation, failure to pass legislation to control the borders, constantly failing to make appropriations on time, failing to adopt budgets on time, members of Congress enriching themselves with insider information gained through closed-door hearings, a Congress that surrenders its war-making power to the president, members resigning in large numbers because they can't stand the disharmony, and others being forced to resign because they were guilty of campaign funding violations, bribery, or sex scandals. We need to stop this stupidity. So, what are we going to do about it? Well, it starts by going to our website, revitalizeamericanow.org, and printing the Revitalizing America contract with the people, taking it to your congressional candidates and tell them simply this: if you won't sign this contract with the people, we're not going to vote for you. They don't deserve your vote if they will not sign this contract. Second, while you are on our website, make a contribution to help us change the system. We can't do it alone without you. Now, what are some of the things that need to be done? Here are a couple of key elements that we need to look at for our society and are included in this contract. All members of Congress, regardless of their party, must faithfully support and defend the Constitution of the United States. 2, the Constitution should be amended to require that Congress adopt the budget of the United States and pass appropriations on time. If they can't do that, they're not doing their job. They don't deserve to be there. So in the same amendment, if the Congress does not pass the budget on time, does not pass the appropriations on time, those members in Congress are not eligible to run for the next election. 3, to create within the federal criminal code a new federal crime which makes it a felony to cause any person to be deprived of any constitutional right, or for any public official to act against the oath of office to support the Constitution of the United States of America. The penalty for such deprivation should be a minimum of 10 years in prison. 4, to abolish the filibuster and the hold. The hold isn't even in the rule of the Senate. It's unconstitutional. It should not be there. The filibuster is a violation of the democratic principles and imposes a good old boy rule over the domestic tranquility of this country. It is anathema. It should be done away with. Have the courage, do it. 5. Abolish all government's rights to confiscate the homesteads of the elderly when they can't afford to pay their property taxes. Elderly people living on fixed incomes aren't our enemies. They shouldn't have the home that they've worked for their entire lives taken away by the government because they have fallen on hard times or only have a fixed income. Let's get with it, shall we? Let's revitalize the American promises now